Hello, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Mike and I are using a brand new platform today, so be patient with us as we go through this maiden voyage of our first go-to webinar. But welcome so much to 5 Strategies to Exit Your Small Business. We're so happy to have you guys here listening. You will note that there is a question area. If you do have a question, feel free to pop your question into that box, and we'll try to take those kind of in real time, but if we don't get to them in real time, we'll try to save a little time at the end. Please keep in mind as you're listening today that if you have questions that are really specific to your business or things that you might not want to pop into that question box, you can just maintain those in your head or make a note of those, because if you're interested, you can schedule a one-on-one complimentary consultation with me and with Micah. And you'll get an email after this webinar that tells you how to do that. So if you have questions that you want to ask but maybe not have addressed in the group, we have a mechanism for you to do that. So I am Jacquelyn Core. I'm a mergers and acquisitions lawyer at the Lynch Law Group. And I'm going to allow Micah, who's with me today, to introduce himself, and he'll start off by telling you a little bit about his firm.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Jacquelyn. I'm glad that you are all here. My name is Micah Larson. I work with Equitable Advisors. I'm one of the regional vice presidents here in Pittsburgh. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I do spend a lot of my time focused on small business and helping business owners plan for their future. So a little bit about me. I'm married. I have 2 children and 1 to be born any day now. So if I have to like jump up and run, it's probably because my wife's in labor. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you never know. So couple things before I jump into Equitable. One, I don't know if Jacquelyn's going to mention it, but she has an awesome podcast called Pittsburgh Business Insights. And there's a lot of good resources. She talks to some really cool people. So highly recommend that you download that podcast. Again, Pittsburgh Business Insights. It's very, very good. So let me tell you a little bit about Equitable before we jump into the 5 strategies to exit your business. Equitable's been around for a long time. We've been over 160 years in business. We've actually been in Pittsburgh for 140. We're actively involved in the community. We do Equitable Days of Service every year where we volunteer with local nonprofits. We have a grant foundation that helps fund different endeavors around the community. We manage more than $220 billion in assets. At this point, have more than 3 million clients and 4,500 financial professionals across the country. We also have a local presence here in Pittsburgh, right in PPG, so you can stop in and see us. So we have the best of both worlds. We have one of the largest and strongest financial institutions in the country behind us. But when you call us, you're also getting a local presence. You're not getting a 1-800 number, that you get a different person every time. I'm not going to go through every bullet point on this slide because that would be insane. But categorically, we can help you with just about everything that you may do, whether that's 401k plans, group benefits, obviously succession planning. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But then we also manage individual assets as well, investment portfolios, insurance, things like that. But we want to do everything through a financial planning lens. And I really believe the value of what we do is that we approach everybody with a plan first, as opposed to what our favorite product is and trying to get you into that, which I'll talk a little bit more actually later about planning and how you do financial planning in relationship to your business. We work with over 1,500 different investment companies and 40 different insurance companies. So we have the ability to go out and shop the best option for you. Through our 160 years, we've built great partnerships. So it's very common that we're able to get you either the same service for a better price or better service for the same price. That's all on me. I'm going to turn it back over to Jacquelyn, let her talk about Lynch.
Thanks so much. So the Lynch Law Group is a full service business firm. So we are really focused on serving small businesses and meeting their needs. When I say we're full service, we do provide everything from family law to real estate work to serve our business clients, but we're very much focused on the small business market and the needs of small businesses, although we serve businesses of all sizes all the way up through Fortune 500 companies. My practice is primarily concentrated on mergers and acquisitions, business sales, and purchases. We do both buy side and sell side work. And that's probably 75% of my practice, and the remainder of my practice is really centered around fractional in-house counsel work. And so this would be the work that you might need done if you needed contracts for your business, but didn't really need to hire a full-time general counsel or somebody full-time in-house to do legal work. We help with a lot of contracts and employment issues, and that's kind of the other 25% of what I do. So thinking about putting this webinar together today, one of the discussions that Micah and I have had in serving clients, and I'll stop to say part of the reason I love so much working with Micah is that he really is somebody who understands business needs, and it has been great to work with the business owners. And that's so important. If you're thinking about selling your business, one of the things that frequently happens is you end up with this money that maybe you had invested or tied up in the business, and you need to know what to do with that. And they are really so savvy about planning for business owners, and there really are unique needs, and Micah's going to talk a lot about those today. So that's a little bit about what we do. And then we'll move on and start to talk about 5 strategies to exit your small business. So one of the things that we hear from a lot of people when they start talking about exiting their small business is that they don't even know where to start. We frequently say that people who have a small business really only do 2 transactions in their lifetime for the most part. There are serial entrepreneurs, so some of you might be serial entrepreneurs who own more than one business or who buy and sell a number of businesses. But the reality is that most people do 2 things. They buy a business and they sell a business. And so that means that you don't have a lot of experience with the process, and the process starts with planning. How would I even begin to consider how I would get rid of this business? And so one of the most common questions that we get is, who would I sell my business to, or how would I get out of this business if I wanted to get out? And ideally that planning occurs both on Micah's side, kind of your personal financial planning, and on our side, your legal planning and your accounting planning, like 3 to 5 years even in advance. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking, well, I don't want to sell anytime soon, maybe this is too soon for me to be thinking about it, I promise it's not. We can certainly catch people up. So if you're on the phone thinking, I want to sell next week, we can help you with that. But it's certainly, okay to plan well in advance and to really think about what that looks like, and to mesh your finances and what your retirement might look like with the sale of your business. So I want to turn it back over to Micah for a minute, just to kind of get him to comment on what role that plays when you're thinking about your investment or your retirement strategy, and you're thinking about exiting, and why it's important to kind of put those together.
Yeah, thanks, Jacquelyn. So the importance of planning ahead is, we cannot emphasize this enough. And I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later and give you a visual. But at the end of the day, the question isn't how much can I sell my business for? The question is, what kind of life do I plan to lead after the sale of my business? And what are the categories of assets that I have that can tie into that lifestyle? A lot of times, many small business owners that we run into, all of their wealth is tied up in their business. So they're putting all of their eggs in one basket in terms of, I need to get a really good sale. And unfortunately, sometimes if you haven't done planning ahead of time, the sale of your business, there's some uncertainty involved in terms of how much you're actually going to be able to get and how you'll be able to structure it, all those sorts of things. So when we plan ahead, we can make sure that this piece of the pie is taken care of really, really well. But also, if there are gaps, we're able to go and look at the other areas that we might be able to help you create assets in that will help you ultimately live the lifestyle that you imagine living, whether that's to go buy another business or to retire ultimately and ride off into the sunset. Whichever direction you take, we want to make sure that we have things in place to ultimately live that life that you intend to live.
Yeah, and this is really important. One of the things that we sometimes hear business owners say is people will come to us and they'll have in their head an amount that they want to sell the business for. And so they'll come and they'll say, I want to sell my business for 1.4 million, or I want to sell my business for 8 million. And I always ask the question, where did you get that value? And some people say, well, I had a valuation done, and that's what the accountant told me I should sell it for, which is a really good answer. But other people say, that's what I think I need to retire. And so a lot of people really think about what they need to get out of their business based on what they think they need to live that lifestyle that Micah is talking about, that is the way you want to live your life and the quality of life you want to have and what you want to accomplish in your days, right? And so the reason why it's so important to kind of marry the sale of your business with that kind of asset planning is it does allow you to address those gaps, because you soon come to the reality that how much you'd like to get out of it or how much you'd like to have for your retirement, you may be surprised pleasantly and you have more than you need to live the lifestyle that you want. And some people, I've had people say, I don't think I have enough. I'm worried I don't have enough. And then they go and they talk to a qualified financial planner and they say, oh, you know what, I do have enough. It's enough. When I plan it the right way and I do the right things with my assets, it's more than enough. But if you do have a gap, then we can help you figure that out too. And we'll talk a little bit later that actually impacts sometimes your deal structure. So depending on what you need to live the lifestyle you really want to live and how long you think you need to live that lifestyle, sometimes people will say, well, I need more money in the next 20 years because I really want to be able to travel and there are things I want to do. But after I'm 75, I don't think I'm going to need as much money to do those things. I don't think I'll want to be as active. And so, we can help structure your deal actually to provide some ongoing revenue even to help you make sense of that. So let's forge ahead and look at the 5 strategies. We'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert here, and we'll share dates with you at the end of this presentation that Micah and I are going to be doing 2 additional webinars. And one of those is on family transitions. And so a lot of people have a family business, whether it started out in your family and came to you through your family, like you inherited it, your dad was in it, your grandmother was in it, whatever the case might be, or you and your family bought it together, or you bought it and you got your kids involved in it. Often a family transition is one way to exit. So one of the webinars that we're going to be doing coming up is a little bit of a deeper dive into how to make a family transition. And this often involves also estate planning. So there's an estate planning component to that. And my partner, Chuck Haddad, is going to join us on that webinar and talk about the estate planning component. And Micah is going to talk about the financial planning component and how those kind of mesh together. And so that will be of interest to you if you're in what you consider to be a family business. So pros and cons of this kind of transition. First of all, some people don't have anybody in the family to whom they can transition it. Or maybe the person in your family to whom you could transition it isn't in your direct line of descent. So occasionally we run into people who have adult children, but the adult children aren't involved in the business. But maybe there's a niece or a nephew that's involved in the business because you were in business with your sister. And it's like, well, okay, I want to transition to that person, but boy, I want to make sure that my kids are protected in this also. So what does that look like? And that requires, an appropriate structuring of that deal so that you're not just handing it over. And some people think I can't give it to my niece because I'd be handing over all this value to her. And I want to help her, but I need to protect my kids too. And you can definitely do both. And so that's just the strategy of your sale that gets involved there. Pros definitely are family legacy, especially if the business includes your name. If your name is on the door, people want to keep their name on the door. And we'll tell you about a way later that can still happen. Sometimes when you go to individual buyers, that still happens. You can still see, the truck driving around town with your name on it, if that's important to your family legacy. But here, if you can give it to somebody in your family and you can create that legacy, that's very important to people. Cons in this, all families are difficult. I'll start by admitting that my own family is difficult. Everybody's family is difficult. And it's really difficult to run a business with your family because there are all kinds of fairness issues involved. There are family dynamics involved that are completely unrelated to business in any way. And those can be difficult to navigate, and they can be difficult to navigate as a part of your sale. And so that's one of the difficulties of a family transition. Another difficulty is financial, in that sometimes the people that you want to give the business to, they don't have the money necessarily to buy the business, but you need to get the money out of the business because it's your retirement. And so I'll let Micah just chime in a little bit here to talk about that and what you see happen surrounding people who are trying to make that family transition to somebody who doesn't have enough money, or maybe can't garner, they're too young to garner financing to get 100% of the money out of the business.
Yeah, this happens a lot. And, obviously we're not going to dive into the details of the strategies that you can put in place, but there are ways in which you can ensure that the person that you're intending to pass the business on is bankable to a certain extent, by saving portions of your assets into some kind of compensation plan for an individual. This can also be done in the key person transition that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So one of the benefits of doing that is you can actually agree upon sale price ahead of time, and it removes some of the uncertainty of what am I actually going to be able to get out of this business. But the con is you actually have to invest some dollars into this person, have them put some sweat equity into the business so that you can compensate them in a way that makes them bankable, where a bank would say, okay, yeah, they have these assets that are here so that they can actually go and transition. There are affordable ways to do that. It's not like you just have to dump a ton of money into a situation to make that happen. There are ways to be creative and do it for minimal cost.
Yeah, and that often deferred compensation that allows that purchase can have a real impact on our last bullet point here, which is the timing of this. So two things that we see often are that it's very helpful to make plans early as to how and when you want to transition to somebody in the family to make the kinds of things Micah is talking about possible. The other thing is that we see some people that want to remain involved in the business. So they might want to pass that business on to somebody else in their family, but they don't want to not get up and go there in the morning. A lot of people say even, I don't know what I'd do with myself if I didn't have the business to go to. And so we can help structure, some ongoing compensation or some ongoing involvement for family members to stay. And then other people say, you can have it, but not until I pass away. And we can help with that planning as well. And that's some of what we'll talk about in that deeper dive webinar when we talk specifically about family transitions. And so we'll move on and talk to our next category here, which is sales to management or an employee. So Micah briefly mentioned key man transitions. This could be key woman transitions. Please don't take offense to key man. This is a term that neither Micah nor I invented. So please don't think we invented this term. Please don't think that we came up with this ourselves. We didn't. But it's just to donate. So you could say key woman if you have somebody in your family who's a key woman who you want to transition to, or if you have somebody who's in your management team who's a key person transition. But really what we're talking about here is somebody who really knows and understands the business and has the ability to run the business, has the business acumen to run the business. But again, here may not have the capital to buy the business, and that's when that deferred compensation that Micah talked about comes into play. A lot of people overlook this as an option. So they think, I want to sell my company. Who out there to whom can I sell the company? And really there's somebody there who maybe hasn't spoken up who would really like to have the company. And that person may also not know that that's a possibility, or that could become a reality for them. And so this is definitely something to explore, is who are your main people other than you that you're relying on to run the company? And is that somebody that you could transition to? And then we can help you figure out more about what that looks like. Pros here, you get somebody who knows the business. One of the things that lots of people are scared about, particularly in selling a family business, is they don't want to sell it and then see it fail. And so even if it's not going to be your money, even if you don't have a revenue distribution coming to you, or you don't have some sort of earn out, still you want to see it succeed. It's your family's legacy. You don't want to see it fail. And selling to somebody who's in management or a key employee can be a great benefit because that person already knows the business operations. And if you're running in an efficient way and you're making money or you're on a growth trajectory, that person is able to continue that really seamlessly. And so that's a huge pro, having somebody that really knows the business and often somebody who's really passionate about the business too. The third option that you see here, where you would sell to your employees, to all the employees, and there would be employee ownership. We don't see ESOPs as much as we used to. They are not quite as often used as they used to be, but it still is an option, and some people do pursue an employee buyout of the business. And so that's also an option that we can talk about. It's more common in manufacturing than it is in other industries, or at least we see it more in manufacturing than we do in other industries. But it's another option to just keep in mind. And we mention these things because they might trigger something in you about what might be a good strategy for your individual business. Micah, do you have anything to add on that one?
Just briefly, if there is a key person that came to your mind, and the way I usually phrase it is, if you were to take a month-long vacation, who would keep your business running? If there's somebody that fits that category, then that's a key person. If you say, I'm going to take a month-long vacation and nothing will happen with my business, then you don't have a key person. But if you have someone who could manage things while you're not there, that's a key person. This person's financial house needs to be in order. Yes, there's the deferred comp where you can help supplement that, but that person also needs to meet with someone like myself and make sure that they're doing everything they need to do on a personal level to make sure, again, they're bankable when the time comes that they actually take over that business and buy you out.
Yeah, and another relevant thing here that Micah alludes to is really you don't want them to take over the business if their own financial house is not in order. And so that process of kind of exploring what do your finances look like can also tell you if you might want to entrust this person, especially if you think that there's going to be some ongoing distribution of revenue to you and you think that continued growth is going to be important. You want to know that this is a person who can be a good steward of the financial resources without you there to oversee that.
Right.
So number 3, selling your business to an individual buyer. So this is the way a lot of businesses go. A lot of executives, business executives, C-suite people, CEOs, CFOs, prior entrepreneurs who owned other business, current business owners are out there looking for businesses to buy. So this market is a really active market, especially right now. We see a lot of individual buyers who are looking to purchase right now. And so this is a sort of obvious way to go. And these people, the question that a lot of business owners ask is, how do I find those people? And the answer is you have to plug into a network. And so we know as lawyers, and Micah knows as financial advisors, a lot of people who are looking to buy. And so that's one source. But we also have the ability to connect you, depending on the size of your business, with a broker or an investment banker or some sort of M&A advisor who can help you not only get your business ready to sell, because there is a component there, but also can help you source buyers and find potential buyers for your business. You have to think about legacy here. Some buyers are legacy buyers, and individuals, it's much easier to maintain the legacy because individual buyers are more frequently going to be one of two things, either owner operators, and so they're going to buy the business and they're going to become the CEO, or they're going to operate the business, become the COO, have some role, or if they're not owner operators, they're investors, in which case they may still want your key person to continue, or even they may want you to continue. And so that's another way to preserve legacy. I told you we'd tell you about a different way to preserve legacy other than a transition to your family, and here it is. So a lot of buyers are people who want to continue the legacy of the business. A lot of sellers or business owners are people who don't want to see their business stripped of its assets. They don't want to see the doors closed. They don't want to see the character of the business change, or don't want to see it rolled up into a private equity company and lose its character. Also, individual buyers are a better fit sometimes for protecting employees. I won't say, some private equity companies are great at that as well. They really want to protect employees, but not all. And so individual buyers typically aren't looking to come in and get rid of every employee in the place. And so if maybe you have family that you don't want to sell to, but you want to make sure they get to keep their job. So maybe your son-in-law is in the business and you don't want to sell to him and he doesn't want to buy, but you don't want him to lose his job when you sell. Individual buyers can help with those kinds of things, and placements for those people can be negotiated as a part of your deal. And so we're coming back again to talking about that deal structure and how you structure your deal to make sure that it meets your individual needs. So overarching here, one of the things you probably can sense is this theme of figuring out, as a small business owner, what is it I want out of my business when I sell? And we would encourage you to think about intangible things. So it doesn't have to all be how much money do I want out of the business. It can also be things like, I don't want the name to change, or I want to make sure these individuals get to stay on in the business, or I want to make sure that there's a product line that my grandfather had, and I don't want to lose that product line. I want to make sure that we continue to manufacture that, or we sell that product, and I don't want us to lose that. And so those are all things that can be negotiated as a part of the sale, and often people don't realize that. So just keep that in mind, those intangibles. When you're thinking about selling, make a list of those things. What's important to you? Because we can help you protect those things and achieve those things. And when you're looking for a buyer, if it's a buyer that can't give you that, it might not be the right buyer. And so it's important to know in advance and to really think about, what are these things that are important to me that I want to keep kind of as I go along this path. Micah, do you want to say anything here about planning in terms of selling to individual buyers? Because I know it is a little different planning as well.
It certainly is. Typically what I see is that if you're selling to an individual buyer, there's far more negotiation involved, as you alluded to, where you have to be very, very detailed in all the things that you're looking for in a buyer, because you don't have one person in mind. You have a list of criteria, and you're trying to go out and find somebody that fits that criteria. There's also, with the first two, you're a little bit more able to control the price. Like, you're able to kind of set those things ahead of time, and certainly there's some flexibility depending on market conditions and performance and stuff like that, but it's a little bit more like, especially if you have some kind of deferred comp plan in place, hey, here's what the expectations are. I'm going to give you this, comp, but you're going to purchase the business for X amount of dollars. So it's a little bit more certain. There's less uncertainty when you're selling here. In this case, the market really dictates what you're able to sell for. So timing becomes really important here as well. Are you selling, and are you positioned to make your business look attractive to a buyer? Because there's a difference in running a business to run it and running a business to sell it, and making sure that you've thought through those things is important.
Absolutely. And when you're picking a broker or an investment banker or an M&A advisor, you want to be able to talk with them and make sure that they're going to be ready to protect those things that you have in your mind that are important to you. And so that's another reason to know those things in advance, because you want to have those discussions, and some people are better suited to prioritize different kinds of things with buyers. All right, number 4. So selling your business to another business, or a strategic sale. So these are things that often come out of the blue. So when people call us and they say, I got an unsolicited offer, this is usually how it happens. And so a lot of times we'll call these strategic buys, and that's because the reason another business would want to buy your business is because they get some strategic advantage out of doing it. And that, you see some of those listed here, like expansion of geography. Maybe you work in a different territory that they haven't been able to break into, and they want to be able to capitalize on that. Purchase of customer lists. This happens a lot if you're running a service business. So if you have a marketing firm, if you have an insurance agency, if you do janitorial supplies, those are all things where your customer list has real value, and it can make a real difference to the value of your business to the right buyer. And that might not be as obvious of a benefit to an individual buyer as it would be to a business buyer or a strategic buyer, because they can see the dollars that they will get from expanding their customer list. And that's something that, if you don't have any customer base, that's a bit of an unknown for an individual buyer. The strategic buyers, they can see that. Also keep in mind that sometimes those customer lists that are being purchased are actually competitors of the purchaser. And so it's also a way to bring in the competition, and by buying your business, they may be eliminating you as a competitor in the market, or eliminating the possibility that an individual buyer is going to come in and continue to run your business as a competitor. And so it's a way to strategically garner a larger portion of the market share. And so that's another strategy that we see. And then the third really common one that we see at the bottom is acquisition of employees if you have talent. And this is actually something we are seeing more frequently in manufacturing right now. We used to see this more in tech, in biotech, where people were trying to buy a company that had really good scientists, or they were trying to buy a software company that had really good programmers, or people could write code, or they had people who were experts in cybersecurity, and so they wanted to buy those people. That still happens in those industries, absolutely. But the newer trend that we've seen are people trying to buy manufacturing skilled employees, because skilled labor, if you're in manufacturing, you know how hard skilled labor is to find right now. So one way to get skilled labor, like how do we get machinists, how do we get welders, is to buy a business that has a bunch of welders, or buy a business with people who know how to run injection molded plastic facilities. And so if you have people that have that expertise and you can purchase them with the business, or acquire them as a part of the business and bring them onto your team, it's a great way to scale up your operations and find skilled labor without having to train people from scratch. And so sometimes that business to business strategic purchase is about the people. And sometimes it's about the people in your management as well. We often see it about the sales team exclusively. If you have salespeople who are just tearing it up and doing an amazing job, and everybody knows that, that's our real competitor, we can't get out from under that guy. Every place we go, he's already been. Every client we talk to, she's already, has given them a pitch. If you have salespeople like that involved in your business, that's attractive, because getting that sales skill, people who can present, people who know the industry, people who know the products, people who can close, those are all really valuable skills. So those are all ways that the people become really important. And then sometimes it's expansion. We don't have this listed here specifically, but sometimes it's expansion of the business lines. So to buy something that would be ancillary, or something that's in your supply chain. And so an example would be, you use a raw material right now, and right now the business is sourcing that raw material. They have contracts and they're buying the raw material, and they're buying lots of it. They need a ton of it, or multiple tons of it, depending on what it is. and what they can do is they can buy the supplier, and then they're getting it at a lower price, because they're not paying even wholesale prices for it anymore. And so it decreases their production cost, and it takes out the negotiation. It takes out the need to purchase it, to make sure you can get enough of it, to make sure that other people aren't bidding against you for it. There are a lot of strategic advantages. And so we see that as another way that strategics come in and buy. And often these strategic buyers occur in the private equity markets. And so investors have come in, and some of you may know a lot about private equity, some of you might not know much about private equity, but investors have come in, they've banded their money together, and they've created what they consider to be platform companies. And so those platform companies might be in specific industries, and they're looking to acquire or roll up smaller companies into those platform companies, and those are then strategic buys. So they've got an $80 million software company and they're looking to buy, IT companies and to roll them up into that platform. And those are strategic buys. So when we talk about strategic sales, that's kind of the thing we're talking about here for the most part.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. So keep in mind, if you're approached or you approach another business to sell, I promise you there is a group of people within that business that's looking to buy your business that is trying everything they can to buy it for as little as possible. I'm not saying the whole business, there's strategic people that are like, we see the value of this business, etc. But there's another group of people that are looking at the numbers and saying, how can we get this for the smallest cost available? So just make sure you have a really good sale team on your side with CPAs, attorneys, and financial advisors who are able to help make sure you don't get taken advantage of.
Yeah, and knowing the value of your business is so important. Like if that does happen, one of the very first things you should do is think about getting a business valuation. A quality of earnings report, figuring out, what your EBITDA is, looking at what common multiples are in the same industry, the same size business, to get some idea and some projection of what the sale price of your company might be. The other thing to keep in mind that Micah alludes to here is that if that person has come to you out of the blue and contacted you and offered to buy your business, they are probably not the only person willing to buy your business. And so at that point, sometimes people who have never thought about selling the business will say, oh my gosh, we didn't even think maybe we could sell the business. And now we have a buyer. We have to take this buyer. And you certainly don't want to waste that buyer if it's an appropriate buyer for you. I'm not saying that won't be the person you go with, but you might want to at least take a deep breath and make sure that, as Micah says, you're getting a fair deal, and that you couldn't get a better deal from somebody else. We have seen instances where people have been approached and offered a value for their business. Somebody comes in and they say, well, buy your business for $5 million. And the people think, well, that's a good EBITDA multiple. That would be a great sale. And then we encourage them to go and talk to an M&A advisor and source other buyers. And they end up, instead of getting, 3x or 4x of EBITDA, they find a strategic buyer and they get 8x of EBITDA. So the sale price is double. So really, just please don't assume if you get that offer that number is in the right ballpark. And you may end up finding out that number's more than the business is worth, and you should jump on it. But just make sure that you take the time and get the resources, get the team in place to look at the real value of that, and to really make sure that that you know everything you need to know. And that is really one of the cons. We kind of skipped pros and cons and wove those in, but one of the cons is that it puts you under pressure when you get that kind of offer. Sometimes people will time limit those offers to try to push you to close, into an LOI quickly. That's a letter of intent. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of the document that sets out the terms. And so they want to get to that stage quickly. They want to lock you in. And that letter of intent usually says you can't source to other buyers. And so the reason they push early for that letter of intent is so that they can get you locked up. They can get you in a place where you're not allowed to see what else is out there. And there's a reason they want to do that. They have already looked at your business enough to know what they think the business is worth, and they're ready to make a move on that. And they don't want you to go figure out that maybe you could get a little more for it. Again, that's not always the case. You might be approached by somebody who's really genuine, who gives you a really fair price, or who it makes really good sense strategically for you to align yourself with another company and you think, nope, this makes perfect sense. Or even you make a personal decision like, we really love the people that run that business. We know they provide good quality service and they're going to take great care of our customers. And so we want to move on it. So you can see, there are lots of considerations here and lots of different ways that you can go in determining how you pick your individual buyer. And it's not always the highest price. It's usually the highest price, but it's not always the highest price. Sometimes there are other concerns. And so Michael will move us on to 5. And this is where we hope to help you not get. And really, we put this on here for two reasons. One, to face the stark reality of the situation that we're in right now, where a lot of businesses have had such a hard time about COVID. And, you know, certainly we're seeing some economic rebound, but, you know, there are so many industries that have been so very hard hit by this and have closed their doors for much longer than they needed or wanted to, because they had no other choice. So they might not have needed to, but there was an order in place that said they had to. And so in that respect, they did need to. And they're just devoid of operating cash at this point, and they think that they can't go on. So if you find yourself in that place, often people think, well, we're going to have to shut the building. We're going to lock the doors. We're going to shut the business down, and we're just going to close it. Or we're just going to file bankruptcy and we're going to be done. And an important thing to know about this, if you do unfortunately find yourself in this circumstance, and again, we hope that you don't, and we hope that, you know, come to us and we'll try to help you make a plan to exit before this happens. But the reality is there are people who will buy distressed businesses. And so that might be a distressed asset sale, and it might be that you don't get a lot of cash at closing. It might be, quite frankly, that you don't get any cash at closing, but you're not going to get any cash if you just close the doors. I mean, you might be able to sell off the assets. You might be able to sell real estate. And so those kinds of things have value in a distressed asset sale. And if your business is in a tough position, but there's somebody who could infuse working capital into your business, it might be saved, and you may be able to negotiate a revenue payment if revenue goes back up. And so that's a way that we can get people to get some money out of their business that they think they might need to close. The other thing we're seeing with a lot more frequency are people who are minority buyers. And so we used to not see people who would buy a minority ownership. And here we're talking about the percentage of ownership that people might end up with in the company. And so usually when somebody buys a company, they want control of the company. They want more than half of it so they can control what happens to it. And we have really seen a resurgence of people who are willing to purchase a minority interest in a business. So think 40 to 45, 48% of the ownership of your business, 2 of 5 board seats. So not the control of your company, but some insight into your company. And this can be a great way to infuse working capital into the company. Often these people are not looking to manage the day-to-day operations. And we also know people who can help you find one of those investors as well. And so, you know, that's another option, is to think about, can you save the company from having to sell it if you find yourself in this position, by really looking to find somebody who could infuse capital and allow you to continue operating, and maybe even to maintain control of the business in the process. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well, Micah, about the planning?
No, I really have nothing to add, other than if you do find yourself in the situation, you know, we should be your first call, or someone like us should be your first call, that we can sit down and really dive deep into the situation and see what options are available.
Yeah, and so some of the things that you might be talking about with somebody like Micah in a situation like this are, you know, protection of your assets, right? If you find yourself in this situation, you know, the first thing people ask is, are they going to take my house? And so how do you make sure that you can keep those assets? How do you make sure that you can continue to pay your bills and take care of your family? And so those are the kinds of things a financial planner can help you navigate in conjunction with a distressed asset sale, or with a sale like this. So things to keep in mind there. So we've talked about those 5 ways. I told you that we're going to take a deeper dive. I didn't tell you what the second webinar was, but the first one is family transitions. And then the other one is, we're going to just talk about business sales and what a sale looks like, and what you should plan that process to look like. and a little bit more about how you should plan your financial planning in conjunction with that sale. And so those are the two that we'll take a deeper dive into. And then Micah, I think you're going to talk next, right, about some of that asset planning. Let's say now you are planning that you're going to sell and you're going to get this money. What do you do with it?
All right, so I'm not going to take too much time to go through this. Again, we're talking very high level today, but would absolutely be happy and we'd love to sit down with any of you and go through this more thoroughly for your specific situation. But I just want to share, there's two different approaches when you go to build a financial plan, period, but specifically when you're talking about business sale. And the one, we call it the common approach because this is what we typically see happen. Let's admit that business owners and entrepreneurs are a different breed of people. They are absolutely amazing in so many respects in their ability to get through difficult times and overcome challenges. And I actually just saw a statistic today that the amount of new businesses started in 2020 was actually higher than 2019 and 2018. So business owners, entrepreneurs are phenomenal people, but we also have a tendency to get focused on the things that's right in front of us. Like, I've got to get this done, I've got to get this done, I've got to get this done. And unfortunately, we kind of get stuck going through our life. And this is what we call the common approach, accumulating different products. So some people are going to have one business and that's going to be their only financial product. That's what I'm talking about when I say product. Or you may have multiple businesses. You may go out and buy real estate. You may have other types of assets such as insurance, key man insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, etc. You could have all kinds of different types of products. But what happens is you go through life and you just kind of pick them a la carte as you need them. And you come up with this hodgepodge portfolio of assets that's really not intentional in any way. It's just a bunch of different things that you happen to need at the time. And unfortunately, when the time comes to actually execute your strategy, you're limited by the products you've accumulated. So let me give you a very simple example. As I mentioned, I hear all the time, hey, I want to sell my business for X amount of dollars. Well, that's great. Your business is a product. That's not a plan, because we don't actually know if the X amount of dollars that you plan to sell your business for is going to produce what you want it to produce. When you go and sell your business, maybe you sell it for the amount that you thought you would, and you're like, this is great, but then you realize that you didn't actually plan for all the different pitfalls that you may come into in terms of taxes, or an event happens that you weren't expecting and you need additional medical care that you weren't planning for. All of those sorts of things come into play. And if we've just accumulated products, our strategy is limited. We can only do the products that we've accumulated. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who reach their goals this way, but if we're honest, they did it on accident. We want to take the opposite approach, and we want to help you think about this differently. We want to start with, where do I actually want to be? What type of monthly income do I need in retirement? Now, I'm assuming that when you're selling your business, you're retiring. Again, you could sell your business and go buy another business, but we need to clarify and write out those goals. What am I actually trying to accomplish, and what do I want to life to look like? Do I want to travel the world and play golf all day, every day? Or do I want to buy a cabin in the woods and never talk to another human being again and drink lemonade? Like, everybody's different, and everybody needs to have a specific vision of what their life is supposed to look like. Then we can actually quantify your strategy. What do we actually need to make your dream a reality? Then we'll look at the portfolio you have, including the business and the other assets that you've accumulated, and see, are they going to get us to where we want to go or not? If they are, awesome. Maybe we just move things around a little bit and make it a little more efficient, make sure that the estate is in good shape for when you ultimately pass on. But we might need to make some tweaks. We might need to tweak the way that you're saving outside of your business value. We may need to change contributions. We may need to go get different products, but we don't know that until we've actually quantified your vision. So if you sit down with Jacquelyn and I, that's the first conversation we're having, is, what is your vision? What is your hope? What is your dream? What do you imagine life looking like? And then we'll take a look at all the different assets that you have and say, how close are we to actually making that dream a reality? Jacquelyn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and we'll come back again to the deal structure, and we're going to talk about that again here in a minute. But we can adapt your deal structure to try to achieve those goals. And it's so important that you think about what you need, that you think about what you want this to look like, whatever your goal is. Like Micah said, maybe what you need is cash to buy another business. And so there's no wrong answer. It's just about what you want that to look like and how we can potentially help you get there through the sale of your business. So deal structures that maximize your sale profit. So there are a lot of considerations when you are selling your business that can get money to you in different ways, or that can potentially save you money. And so one of the things that a lot of business owners worry about when they're selling their business are capital gains tax. So what kind of capital gains tax am I going to have to pay? And while we are not accountants, we are not tax advisors, neither Micah nor I. What we can do is we can work with your accountants and your tax advisors to make sure that we have strategies on our side that dovetail with the best tax strategy for you. And so developing a tax strategy really is important, and having an accountant in the mix to help figure that out is important. Often people will say, I can't sell my business as an asset sale because I know if I do, I'll get capital gains tax. I'll get hit with capital gains tax. But the reality is a lot of buyers will say the opposite. They'll say, I don't want to buy a business where I can't, it's asset heavy. I have to be able to depreciate the asset. So I have to have it as an asset purchase. And that's not a gulf that cannot be crossed. Often we can structure the deal to say, okay, go talk to your tax person and figure out, how much would your capital gains tax be? Okay, buyer, if you really want to buy this as an asset purchase, then we need to increase the purchase price by this amount, which is enough to cover my capital gains tax and enough to cover the capital gains tax on the increase that we just put in. And an accountant can help you easily figure that out. And sometimes the difference gets split on those kinds of things, and that's all part of the negotiation. But negotiating that tax strategy is really important. A lot of people are ready to get out of their business, but they're not ready to not have any more income. Either their financial plan that they come up with Micah doesn't allow that. They still need some money to supplement their lifestyle, or they just want it, right? They want to have the benefit of it, or their business is valued such that they can continue to have this benefit of additional income coming in. And that can be structured a couple of different ways, and you see a couple of examples of that here: earnouts and revenue payments. And so revenue payments can fluctuate based on how the company does. So if the company's on a growth trajectory and you think it's going to continue to do great, sometimes you can have a flexible payment where you'll get more if the company does great and you'll get less if the company does not as well. This is useful for people who are going to stay involved in some way in the company. So if you control the sales of the company and you're going to stay on as the salesperson and you're convinced you can continue to show growth, then a revenue payment can be great for you, because you can help drive that revenue up and you get an increased payout as a result of that. Consulting agreements, just another way for you to stay on. So, hey, I'm not quite ready to ride off into the sunset. I want to buy my cabin in the woods and I want to drink lemonade there, but I only want to do it on the weekends, or I only want to do it 4 days a week. And the rest of the time, I still want either the intellectual engagement, I want to stay involved in the industry, my friends are at work, we hear people say all kinds of things. And a consulting agreement to stay involved in some way is another way to make that happen. And then again, we spoke a little already about investors versus owner operators. A lot of people looking to buy a business aren't looking to run it. They want to buy it. They want to keep management in place. They're looking for strong CEOs. They're looking for people to stay in the business. So if you want to eliminate some of the risk, but you still want to stay involved in the business, sometimes people will say, we're at a high right now. It's the right time to sell, but I'm not ready to retire. Finding an investor buyer can be a great option, because you get the investor buyer, they buy the business from you, but you get to still stay there and you still get a salary or maybe the same draw that you were taking when you were there. And so those are all structures that we can explore. So some questions to ask as we work toward wrapping up here, and we aren't going to address these here. These are just food for thought, things for you to think about, and great things for you to think about if you want to take advantage of a consultation with Micah and I to talk more about your individual business, which we're happy to do. That lets us really tailor our conversation more to your needs. And some things you might want to think about in advance of that are, when do you want to exit? What your financial goals are. That's, as Micah said, those are the first two questions. When and what do you want to happen? And then what are the tax implications? So those are discussions that you'd want to have with your financial advisors, your accountants. And then what kind of deal structure are you seeking? So what are those other things that you want to protect? And those are all things that are flexible within your exit strategy. So save the date. If you are planning to sell your business, whether you're selling to an individual or selling to a strategic buyer, a B2B sale, our webinar on planning to sell your business will be April 21st at 12 p.m., so noon again on the 21st. And then the webinar on planning to transition your family business will be on May 19th. So if you have a family business and you want to transition within your family, that's a great deep dive webinar for you. We invite you to join us. We're going to send you all out an email in follow-up. You'll get a thank you email, but then you'll get a secondary email from us as well that tells you how to schedule that one-on-one consultation from us if you'd like to have that. I see that we don't have any questions in the chat box. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Micah, do you want to add anything else before we sign off?
I really appreciate you guys coming. And last thing, if you're like, hey, I need to talk to Jacquelyn, but I don't need to talk to Micah because I have a great financial person, that's totally fine, or vice versa. Like, we're not going to undo any good work that's been done by other advisors that you have, but we do have a great deal of expertise and we believe we can add value to that conversation. So don't hesitate to reach out to either of us.
Absolutely. And we're happy to do that consultation with you, but that's not necessary that you talk to both of us if one or the other of us is a better fit for you now or a better fit for you, period. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope this was of value. I would love for you to send us some feedback. And if there are any specific things that, if you plan to attend one of those future webinars and you have some specific things you think it would be really helpful for you if we covered, please send those to us, because we don't have those webinars fully prepared yet. And we would certainly love to talk about the things that would be useful to you as a business owner planning an exit strategy. So we'd love to have some feedback from you today, and we hope this was useful to you guys. So happy St. Patrick's Day. We hope everyone stays safe, and maybe you have a little celebration of the holiday today. And we hope to get to work with you along the way. Thanks so much.
Have a great day, everyone.